If there's something that I miss as being a vegetarian that I haven't found a good substitute for, it's sort of the idea of a chicken apple sausage. So I thought I'd try making one of my own. Now, I don't know how this is going to come out. Maybe good, maybe just okay. I'm not sure, but I'm going to try it because I think it'd be interesting to try and make the texture of the chicken in the sausage without chicken, and then get the apple flavor and all the other spicy flavors that you think of when you think of a chicken apple sausage. So I'm going to try making it. Let's see how it comes together. Now, this recipe, while it's fairly simple, is fairly detailed and takes a lot of time to put together. So if you're going to make it, I would suggest making it a large batch of it and then freezing some of the sausages once you've made them, and then you can pull them out anytime and have one. So I'm starting off with about 1 sweet onion and about a tablespoon of garlic that I'm going to saute together. Now I have some mushrooms in here, and these were just frozen mushrooms that I defrosted, and I'm going to go ahead and cook in here. So they're a little moist because they were defrosted. But I'm going to go ahead and cook them down and put them as part of this dish. Next, I'm going to add my apples. Now, these are just Fuji apples that I found. I'm going to go ahead and cut them into chunks and put them in here to mix in. I suppose a green apple might have been nice for a little bit of tartness, but this will work just fine. Now, I'm going to saute these for a little bit longer until everything gets soft. Now, remember, I'm going to cook it a couple of more times along the way, so I don't want to overcook it here. I just want to get it started. So I'll continue to cook this down a little bit and add some spices. Here's where I'm going to add some sage. I think sage adds a nice depth to it. I'll add about a tablespoon of sage. I want it to be really pungent. I want the flavors to come through and be bold. I don't want it to be boring in any way. I'm also going to add some rosemary. So I got some rosemary here, and I'm going to do about a tablespoon of rosemary as well. It's just dried rosemary. There's a lot of liquid coming off, so it'll help soften these things up. And then I'm going to add some fennel seed. Fennel will give it that sort of thing like licorice, where it's got a little bit of flavor to it. And I'll go ahead and just mix these in here. As I said, the moisture will absorb into them and it'll come out kind of nice. And next I'm going to add some maple syrup. Maple syrup will just kind of sweeten the whole mix up. I only want about a tablespoon in there, but it's just to kind of soften the whole feeling of it because you've got all these nice spices, and the maple syrup will make it just kind of nice and make it pleasant. So once these have cooked up and everybody's a little soft, I can see the apples are a little soft, the mushrooms are cooked, the onions are pretty well cooked down, I'm about ready to take this off. I'm just going to continue to cook it a little bit, just make sure that my spices, I can see a couple little pieces in there. I just want to make sure that they're all kind of mixed up and kind of cooked down a little bit. I don't want any crunch of spice when I take it out and use it, so I just wanted to make sure that it's cooked. So we're just going to go maybe 8 or 10 minutes until we get something that looks like this. And it's a really nice looking thing. It smells great at this point. Now I'm going to remove this from the pan and put it into a bowl that I'll use later. So I'm going to let it cool down a little bit. And now I'm going to start with the rest of this. I'm going to use some garbanzo beans, chickpeas, and also some white kidney beans. Those are the two things that are going to help me get this together and make a nice sort of binding for it. So I'll go ahead and give those a wash off. Since they were canned, I like to rinse them off, and I'll get them into a food processor. And this will start to come together as sort of a nice dish. It's almost like a hummus at this point that I'm making, but then I'll be adding it to my other ingredients to have a nice little sausage that I can make. So I'll go ahead and put these in here, and I'll start getting my food processor going to start mushing these up. So as those start to crunch up, I can take a look and see how it's going. It looks like they're getting nice and soft and making that sort of hummus-like thing, and I can see that it's really coming together nicely. It still needs a little more time in there just because there's still some chunks. I want to make sure it's nice and smooth. So this is going to be the base for my dish. When I put the sausages together, it's all that vegetable matter, these beans. And now I'll mix my ingredients together. I've got my beans here. Like I said, it looks a little bit like a hummus. And I've got my apples and my mushrooms and my onions. And I'm going to go ahead and mix those all together. This is what's going to give me my base texture for my sausage. It's going to come together kind of nicely because it's got all these different things in it. The beans will sort of emulate the chicken in a way, and the binding from that, where I get the spices and the apples and the mushrooms that kind of fill out sort of the texture elements. And my final ingredient is Vital Wheat gluten. I'm going to add about a cup of that because that's going to give me a little bit more binding, so I have a little bit more texture to it. As you see, I'm bringing it together, and it almost looks like a dough at this point, which is kind of what I want. I want it to have that sort of thing where it sticks together and actually holds its shape. So that way I can make it look like a sausage. So here's my loaf. It looks a little weird like that, but I'm going to go ahead and take my loaf and break it apart. Now here comes the second part of my cooking. I'm going to actually take pieces off of this. I'm going to divide this up into about 12 pieces. And I'm going to take pieces off and I'm going to wrap them in aluminum foil. So that way I can steam them and actually start to cook the rest of it. You need to get that bean mixture to sort of soften a little bit, and you want the Vital Wheat gluten to kind of get a little moisture inside it so it becomes a little bit less harsh. So I'll form these into like a shape of a sausage, and I'm going to add some smoked paprika for a little bit more flavor. It's just something on the outside to just give it a little more taste. And then what I'll do is I'll make sure that they're nice and round and long like a sausage, and then I'll wrap them up. So once I've wrapped up all of them, I can put them in my steamer and actually steam them for about 10 minutes or so. I think the steaming is an important step in this process to make sure that you get the right textures in it. You want to make sure that everything's kind of nice and soft, so that way when you're at the end, you can pan fry it a little bit and get a nice texture going on the outside. So I'll go ahead and just put these in my steamer basket. I'll just lay them in here, and I'll put some water underneath it, and I'll let them boil off for about 10 or 15 minutes. And I'll just go ahead and do this as many as I have there. I'll just keep adding on and just let this start boiling. So it'll start cooking for a while, and it actually works out fairly well when I put it together, that they come out and they've actually got a really nice sort of look to them. And they're, as I expect, when I look inside, oh look, they're a little bit textured, they have a little bit of softness to them, which is exactly what I want. Now comes that last step of actually pan frying them. I'm going to spray a little olive oil in my pan, and then go ahead and just put them in the pan and sear them until they start to turn a little bit brown on the outside. And that's really it. This is the last step in the process. This just takes a couple of minutes, but all I'm trying to do is make sure that with a little bit of searing, they hold together and they get a little texture and they taste kind of nice. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I'll do all 12 of them. I'll just keep cycling through them until I've got all of them done. They're all a little bit browned. And then once it's done, I'll remove them and I'll put them in a container. I'll eat one right now, but I'll put the rest in the freezer so I always have some on hand for a while. If I want a sausage, I can just take one out, heat it up a little bit, throw it in the pan, throw it in the microwave, and have a nice sausage. And all the flavors are there, and the texture is certainly there. Though it's not quite a sausage, it certainly gives me the impression of being a chicken apple sausage.